Welcome to VLearn Virtual Learning Network. This is session number 10 of Social Problems in India and the topic is rural labor. Topics to be covered in this session are introduction, rural labor in the pre-British and British period, new measures in rural labor in the post-independence period, problems of non-agricultural laborers and artisans, rural unrest and labor welfare measures, contemporary social processes and rural laborers. Now come to the first topic, introduction. Rural laborers constitute a distinct component of rural labor force. However, the socio-economic position of rural laborers has not been the same over the board historical periods. Hence, besides making a brief historical overview on the issue of the agriculture laborers, this session also presents various dimensions of the problems of rural laborers. The problems of the rural labor of contemporary India are discussed at great length here with special reference to land reform and agricultural modernization. The problems of non-agricultural laborers and artisans are also discussed in this session. Rural unrest is an integral part of rural labor problems in India. Rural labor in the pre-British and British period. Now, India is predominantly an agrarian society with 3/4 of her population living in villages and depending mainly on agriculture and related occupations for its livelihood. Now, first one is pre-British period. The pre-British period, the dominant Hindu society was divided into hierarchical caste group. Village-based occupations were linked with caste groups where mostly the upper caste owned and controlled the land. The wielded economic and political power over all low caste and tribes and acted as patrons of the social and ethical codes of the entire village. The landless group over a period of time were reduced to serving caste at the farms or related workplaces of higher castes. Second, British period. These traditional relationships in land experienced a steady transformation during the British rule in the country. The colonials introduces private property in land through the new land system and thus created class of land owners, tenants, sharecroppers and agricultural laborers. Without modernizing the agriculture and by appropriating the surplus land, the British rulers inflicted untold miseries, particularly on the marginal farmers and agricultural laborers. There were instances of tenants, cultivators fleeing from the land once they were unable to pay the rent or clear the debt. Wherever the commercial crops were introduced, their benefits went to the middlemen and landowners. Thus, in due course of functioning of British land policy, the rural society in India emerged to be highly stratified. It led to the concentration of land in the hands of a few while many of the poor peasants lost their land. Many of these poor peasants who lost lands because of poverty etc. were resettled on these lands as sharecroppers, and those who were not resettled joined the army of agricultural laborers. New measures in rural labor in post-independence period. First is land reforms. When the country became independent, it was faced with the major task of removing inequality and exploitation in the agrarian socio-economic structure. The most exploited group, agriculture laborers and marginal farmers, had to be the main focus in such efforts. The land being central to village economy needed redistribution. In the first 5 years plan itself, the land reform policy were concretized at government level. new measures and rural labor in post-independent period. Hence, the main objective of the land reform have been first, abolition of intermediaries, second, imposition of ceiling restrictions on land holding, third, distribution of surplus land, fourth, tenancy reforms, and last one is increase in agriculture production. As the first and major step, the various state government passes act to abolish zamindari system and redistribute surplus land to the tenants and poor peasants. As a result of these measures, the governments assumed direct responsibility for revenue administration. Overall, the abolition of zamindari did not make significant impact to improve the position of sharecroppers and laborers. Many of the tenants, however, get ownership rights of the lands. As regards the protection of tenants from forceful eviction by the landlord and also the transfer of ownership of land into the hands of tiller at reasonable terms, the outcome was quite disappointing. The thrust of the government to change village economy was based on a technological perspective which was best reflected in the Green Revolution experiment in Indian agriculture. India adopted modernization of agriculture by improving technology and other inputs. It is also worth noting that the higher productivity and more income to landlords do not necessarily bring better rewards to the farm laborers whose share in the increase is negligible as compared to the gains of landlords. High technology cultivation reduces the intensity of labor absorption. Equally relevant is the fact that for attaining some kind of equity in the distribution of productive resources, Indian government needs to allocate more and more funds for the backward regions where the condition of marginal farmers and farm laborers is pathetic. Problems of non-agricultural laborers and artisans. The non-agricultural laborers and artisans constitute an important segment of rural labor force since ages. However, their socio-economic position has not been uniform in nature over a period of time. Pre-independence period, the artisans formed the base of village and urban economy in India during the pre-colonial. All members of the artisan family were usually involved in production. Numerous lower caste families have traditionally been engaging in various crafts and agriculture related non-farm activities. The main among them were those of carpenters, blacksmith, potter, weaver, leather workers, and basket makers. In spite of many odds, village artisans and craftsmen enjoyed a reasonably good social status in the society. However, the socio-economic condition of these artisans and craftsmen deteriorated sharply with the introduction of British rule in India. Because of the import-oriented British policy, these artisans and craftsmen lost their traditional market and many of them also lost these traditional avenues of employment. This displaced labor force was in search of alternative employment and they were extremely insecure in the rural economy. Many of them joined either the army of the agriculture laborers or migrated to the urban areas for the mainstay of their livelihood. Post-independence period. The post-independence period changed the situation further. The growth of urbanization as a manifestation of the linkages between society and modern technology resulted in the weakening of traditional bonds of society. Equally significant was the creation of new opportunities in non-farm occupations. Many of the traditional artisans and craftsmen either migrated to urban areas for improving their incomes or shifted from their traditional occupations to non-farm employment. Due to sharp increase in rural population, it is considered necessary to relieve agriculture from the pressure of excess labor. This would check decline in the land-man ratio and thereby increase labor productivity in agriculture. It is also being realized that urban areas cannot absorb the growing migratory rural labor force due to the ever-growing number of job seekers in both formal and informal sectors. Government has intimated a number of schemes through which the artisans and non-farm workers are trained in various traders or skills and are helped financially to improve their earnings. There are efforts to organize them under cooperatives so that they could be freed from the clutches of middlemen. There is a need for taking up an appropriate combination of farming activities with animal husbandry, piggery, poultry, duckers, and fish farming. Such an approach has taken deeper roots and is extensively practiced with substantive social and private profitability in China and in a number of Southeast Asian countries. Now, rural unrest and labor welfare measures. Rural unrest in overview. The prevalent hierarchy in socio-economic relations was primarily based on the caste system, with the dominant caste controlling power and acting as guardians of the serving caste, such as static village once in a while experienced descent from the peasant when it became almost impossible for them to survive against the odds, such as inadequate crops and ruthless exploitations by king, their middlemen, and money lenders. In the post independence period, village India has no more remained a harmonic system. Various socio economic and political changes have created conflict of interest within the village community. Traditionally, the higher caste used to receive obedience and marked difference from their tenants and agricultural laborers, mostly the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, but are now finding them to be disobedient and defiant. Effort to organize farm and non-farm laborers by voluntary social group of political parties have resulted in their intimidation by the employers wherever the laborers have become conscious of their rights and try to assert themselves against injustice and exploitation. The feudal elements try to suppress this new awakening among them with increased brutality. Social obsessions in its worst form is rampant in almost all parts of the country. Status of labor laws. As compared to industrial workers, only a few labor laws exist for agricultural laborers, and those also supply to a few sections of them, leaving aside a few activities like tea plantations which have a history of the organized laborers. In majority of the categories, the affected workers never get benefited under these acts. In reality, a majority of them are not even aware of such legal measures which protect their interests. Rural unrest and labor welfare measures. The main factor which make it difficult to organize the workers are large number of employers, dispersal of workers over a large geographical regions, uncertainty of employment, rapid growth of rural population resulting in surplus manpower, family labor substituting for the hired labor, and overall low productivity in agriculture. Welfare program for the rural poor. These are mainly a result of uneven and unbalanced development in the rural economy. Therefore, in order to protect the rural laborers and marginal farmers, the government launched several anti-poverty programs. There are other schemes such as the IRDP which operated at the level of the development bloc. Program identified the weaker families in the village and provides them loans and subsidies for obtaining inputs which would help improve production or create self-employment. The selected families are provided seeds, fertilizers, draught, cattle, pigs, etc. according to their need. A major part of the cost of procuring these inputs are covered by government subsidies, and the rest is through bank loans at low interest rates. These programs are initiated at the national level but operate through the various state governments. The objectives of all these development schemes is to provide some form of employment or inputs to the rural poor so that they are not left to the mercies of the exploiting sections. One major criticism is that a majority of them are independent of the agricultural activity without direct linkage to agriculture and allied sectors. The beneficiaries of these programs are not necessarily the most needy. Now, contemporary social processes and rural laborers. General impact on agriculture laborers. Regions close to the command areas of agricultural growth have been experiencing exodus of manpower, which in turn hike the wages of farm laborers. Similar situation has emerged in regions which are in contact with industrial growth centers. Earlier studies on the consumption pattern of rural poor shows that over three-fourths of their income used to be spent on food items alone. Such a trend is on the decline, and wherever wages of laborers show an improvement, they spend more on durable items like purchasing a bicycle or transistors or improving housing. There is also evidence of change in food habits in some regions from the coarse grains to wheat and rice. So, in the areas of health or education, no appreciable change, and witness the fact cannot be denied that in prosperous agriculture zones, farmer laborers show improvement in their health or education. Commercialization and market integration of tribal areas, coupled with the replacement of collective land tenure system by individual holding, has led to growing landlessness, loss of food security, and diminishing access to forest produce. Whenever there are mobilization of the rural poor by voluntary organizations of political parties, a new consciousness has emerged among them against their age-old exploitation and about their rights. This has earned them social pride and economic relief. It is also a fact that such organized groups have to face the warmth of rich landlords and dominant caste groups. Traditional caste system is also going through several changes which has affected the rural poor. Thus, several interrelated changes are occurring in rural society, which are bound to create impact on their lives of farm and non-farm laborers. Now, impact of female laborers. Traditionally, females have actively been participated in the farm activities. They look after the cattle, domestic work, and even part of the farming activity. According to NSS data, the average daily earnings are found to be lower than those of male laborers in all the states and in various age groups. Punjab, Haryana, where the overall earnings of male laborers are higher, have higher female earnings. However, there are gender differential in earnings. The reported differences in the daily earnings of male and female agricultural laborers are clear indication of discrimination against the latter. Women also suffer from a higher instability in employment. Now there are some questions on the basis of this session. First one is, who were the serving caste in traditional India, and write a note on their socio-economic position. Second is, write a note on the impact of agriculture modernization on the rural labor in India. That's it for this session. Thank you. Happy learning, we learning.